How are you? And a very good evening. It's 7 o'clock, and welcome to the Bedminster Township Committee, the regular scheduled meeting, for March 5th, 2018. Our entire committee is with us tonight. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ms. Sullivan, can I get the open? Oh, I'll let her get back to her desk.
Yeah, hold on one second.
Before we get any further, we have a brand new sound system. This is only the second meeting we've had it. Can everybody hear? I'm pretty loud anyway, but make sure you can hear. And I'll take an informal poll before we get too far. Is there anybody in here who doesn't have power? You don't have power in your house?
Yeah.
Okay. What street?
Ironia Road.
Okay.
You guys are doing great.
All right. Well, no, that'll be a discussion for later, but
You can talk to Chester and Randolph about that.
We're good. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was sent to the Courier News in Somerville and to the Burnsville News in Whippany to all subscribers, and also posted here at the Municipal Building as of January 8th, 2018.
I'll ask you all to join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have two sets of meeting minutes to approve. The February 20th regular agenda meeting and the February 20th executive session. Any comments or questions?
There
If
were
not,
some small amendments to
I
the
saw.
February 20th. They are in front of you, highlighted with the small change.
Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Permits and raffles, we have several tonight. The hole-in-one raffle license for the Special Olympics, New Jersey, on June the 4th, 2018, 10:30 a.m., 4 p.m., Fiddler's Elbow Country Club, 811 Rattlesnake Bridge Road. An on-premise merchandise raffle, also for Special Olympics, New Jersey, June 4th, 2018, 10:30 a.m., 4 p.m., Fiddler's Elbow, 811 Rattlesnake Bridge Road. Also, on-premise merchandise raffle for the Junior League of Morristown, May the 4th, 2018, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., Fiddler's Elbow Country Club, 811 Rattlesnake Bridge Road. And finally, a social affair permit for the Somerset Hills Education Foundation, March 24th, 2018, 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. at the United States Equestrian Team Foundation, 1040 Pottersville Road. It's good to see Chef in Bedminster.
Yep.
Any comments or questions? And if not, I'll take a motion for the permits and raffles.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Twice every meeting. That microphone up there at the podium is open to members of the public who wish to comment on anything pertaining to the town. And I see a few people here tonight. This is your opportunity, so come and talk. Line up. All you have to do is get in front of that microphone, state your name and your address, and speak your piece.
I'm Liz First, and I live at 485 Cedar Ridge Road in Bedminster here. I'm here because there was an article in the Bedminster News about an Airbnb illegally that is on our road. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit, how it affects us. Most Airbnbs, as you know, are small apartments in Jersey City, Hoboken, New York, where people rent out a room, or they may rent out a small house. This is not a typical Airbnb at 270 Cedar Ridge Road. It is a very large estate with 6 bedrooms, very expansive living areas, a gorgeous pool, a gym, and it's the kind of place that usually one person doesn't rent. It is very attractive to groups. And I can tell you, as a person who lives on the road, groups use this property every weekend, and their cars and their trucks are up and down the road, disturbing walkers, horseback riders, people walking their dogs. The cars probably are not from New Jersey, or maybe they're not from Bedminster. They certainly don't understand that on a dirt road you can only go 20 or 25. These cars are going 50 and 60, and frankly they scare us when we are walking on the road. Now, I know that the people who own this house probably have no intention or don't know that they're renting to large groups. Because they rent to one person, they make the deal, and it's the one person that they deal with. They don't know who is renting, and they don't know if there's a group, who the groups are inviting as their guests. So, for example, if you look on the website of this Airbnb, it says that there are no parties or events. But I'm showing you, these are the comments that are on the website from people that break the rules. One person is Catherine. She writes in September 2017, the hosts were great and let me go to see the house beforehand to plan our company retreat. The house is great for a small company retreat or a family reunion. Now, I know a company retreat can have 5 people or you can have 105 people at a company retreat once you talk about speakers and guests, etc. Here's another gal writing, Nancy, in December 2017. We hosted a small rehearsal dinner and we're so happy to find the house so well equipped. We felt as if we were entertaining at our own home. Now, maybe if you've been to rehearsal dinners in people's homes. My sister had one this summer, small. She had 50 or 60 people at her home in Little Compton, Rhode Island. So you have no way of gauging how many people are coming to these things. One of the other rules that we have on the website says not safe or suitable for children 0 to 12. So here's Erica writing on July 7, 2017. We hosted our son's first birthday during our stay, and our guests couldn't stop talking about how beautiful the backyard was. Well, as a parent and a grandparent, that backyard has an attractive pool. And the operators of this Airbnb had no idea that there is a degree of safety that maybe some of their guests and guests of guests do not comply with. And I wonder what happens if there is a tragedy there, a small child drowning. Is this township aware that there might be a liability for failure to enforce your own zoning ordinance if something like that were to happen? So I'm here to ask you to think about taking this Airbnb off the rolls of Airbnb, enforcing your own zoning ordinance, which doesn't allow, and thinking about what other towns have done to pass anti-Airbnb zoning ordinances. I'm just going to give you a few, because I got these right off the internet, and the League of Municipalities confirmed it to me. Woodcliff Lake has one. Harass has one. Palisades Park adopted August 26, bans rentals of 30 days or less. East Rutherford adopted October 18, bans rentals of 30 days or less. Fort Lee approved October 13, defines a short-term rental of 30 days. So something that like 270 that has a rental by the night or by the weekend would not hold up. And last is Fairview, just in December, they ban rentals of 30 days or less. So this is the kind of ordinance that you may want to consider to try to make sure that this Airbnb is not there and other Airbnbs that may be thinking of locating in our township. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Greg Auerbach and I reside at 475 Cedar Ridge Road. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about why I moved to town. So I moved here 6 years ago with 2 little children and 1 on the way. So now I have a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And it was just last summer they started riding their bicycles. So for me, living on Cedar Ridge Road was a choice. I chose to live there because I think there's somewhere between 10 and 12 homes. And they ride up and down, they ride down to the river, and that's something wonderful. And having someone, a neighbor, bring in temporary tenants, come here with perhaps great intentions, don't care as much about the traffic on the road. But I do, and I care because my kids are old enough to now ride alone. And I tell them you can ride down to the neighbor's house, you can ride down to the river, but now I think differently about that. And I hope if you have children, or if you know people who have children, there's a reason why I moved to this town, and I think that's why we're here. So I'm concerned about that. And I thought about this when sort of some of us spoke to each other. I said, my neighbor's doing this, and what's the reason for my neighbor to do this? I can only think that it's an economic benefit. And that's fine, but how does that impact me as a neighbor, and how does that impact my lifestyle here? We love, in fact, the mayor may not remember, but I met him a few years ago, and at the airport with a neighbor of mine. He said, "Hey, I'm your mayor. Don't ask me to ever pave Cedar Ridge Road." I said, "Don't worry, I won't ever ask you to pave Cedar Ridge Road." I love that because it disincentivizes traffic. So now, when you bring large groups of people who bring guests, they don't care about our road. And I love the bumps in the road, and I love the fact that you guys don't rush to fix it because it keeps people off the road. But when people will
Music to
come-
Miss Nance's ears.
So when people come down our road and don't care, and if you've ever passed our road kind of, it's a little bit crested like that, so you kind of have to be on the side. And when my little kids are riding their bicycles, they're not as proficient as grown-ups, and maybe they will one day be, but I don't really see any benefit for us living here and having that kind of traffic here. So I hope you take that into consideration. I hope you think about why someone like me would move out here. You know, I came here 6 years ago with the intention to raise my kids here. So please think about that, and if you can protect my kids, that would be good. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stephen First. I live at 485 Cedar Ridge Road. And I just wanted to give you my sense of this problem. The problem is a bit unique because here we have a zoning problem driven by technology. And I think there are really two prongs to this. The first prong is we have ordinances. The ordinances prescribe certain kinds of businesses, hotels, party venues, etc. And as you can tell from the excerpts my wife read off the web, this property is being used, and we're talking about zoning a use, where this property is being used for uses that are not permitted in the ordinance. So first of all, I'm asking that the ordinances that we do have be enforced. And secondly, we have a problem which postdates the basic zoning ordinance. Obviously, the ordinance gets updated from time to time, and I have to admit that I don't read all of those things. But here we have something that postdates the core of the ordinance at least. And the ordinance has to be updated to comply with the times and to meet the requirements of the township. And we're requesting that you do so, maybe either from the League of Municipalities or from some of the municipalities that were mentioned before. We can provide that list if you need it. Get some sample ordinances and pass one as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bill Purcell, Cedar Ridge Road, recovering from some strained vocal cords, so bear with me. Just to be fair and balanced, we live on Cedar Ridge Road. We've been across from Jim and Peggy Lyons, the names in the newspaper, for over 20 years. They're excellent neighbors and have been and continue to be. And I must admit, my office is right on Main Street, Dr. Najarian's office, and I'm back and forth to the house all the time. I go up and down Cedar Ridge Road constantly. I just haven't seen this traffic. I haven't seen any speeding. I haven't seen any horses disturbed. As they say, almost every single day of the week, including the weekends, I'm back and forth on the road numerous times. So, not saying people are exaggerating what they saw, but I think the panel should know that at least some of the neighbors who didn't even know about this and read about it in the newspaper was sort of surprised because we've noticed no change, no crowds, no anything. We live right across the street from the Lions. So just put that in the record that it's not a one-sided group that's here tonight in terms of informing you about what's happening on Cedar Ridge Road.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sharon Lynch. I also live on Cedar Ridge, and I have to agree with Bill. I walk all the time myself. I'm out, cut my own grass, I'm out there all the time. I didn't notice any difference. I have wonderful neighbors. I have wonderful neighbors at Cedar Ridge. I think they're all fantastic. The ones that speed are those who live on the road. I don't see many cars. I don't see many speeders. The ones I see again are the cars that I recognize and because we live here. So in all fairness, I don't notice any change at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryder Zebarth. I live at Cedar Ridge Farm. That's 660 Cedar Ridge Road at the top of the hill. A little house with a Christmas tree in the front field every year. And I am probably the one that noticed the biggest change because I'm at the crest of the hill. So I can see cars coming in at night and out at night because my bedroom window overlooks Cedar Ridge Road. And when I first started to notice it, I mentioned it to a police officer here, a woman, who I have a little bit of a relationship with because I had a very good relationship with Craig Meyer, who he and his brother put our septic in years ago. And when we lost Craig, I felt like I needed an ally on the road, and she sort of took over a little bit for me, and she cruises when I'm away and does nice things for us and keep in touch. So I said, have you noticed, people speeding and doing this and that? She said, no, but I'll take a run around for you every once in a while. And she has. But I put extra lights in it because people were creeping up Cedar Ridge Road and stopping and looking at windows at night. And I thought, that has never happened, ever here. And I would hear loud music from the cars, and it was creeping me out. So I put more lights on my barns that were, sort of motion detectors. And Michael and I were talking about putting a sensor on our gate, something else we've never had to do. We've never locked our doors here, ever. And I was mentioning this to Rachel one day this summer, saying, what is with all this traffic on Cedar Ridge and all these out-of-state cars and cars creeping along? And she said, I don't know, but she said, the Lions is surrounding their house out, and it could have something to do with the in and out of traffic. So of course, then my antenna went up, and then I started noticing more and more people, and then people were stopping in my house, asking where their house was, because the two houses are similar, Georgian-style homes. Where do the Lions live? Is this where the Lions? Is this Cedar Fields? No, I said no, this is Cedar Ridge Farm. Oh, so in and out with that, and I thought, so I got the word that it was an Airbnb, and I happen to have a cottage that's grandfathered on my property, and I wanted to do an Airbnb too, and I thought, how fun would that be? So I looked into it, and I called my insurance agent, and I said, could I do an Airbnb on my property? He said, let me call Cincinnati. So he called Cincinnati, and Cincinnati said, if she does an Airbnb on that property, we will drop her like a hotcake. They give you Airbnb a $1 million policy. That's it. If someone breaks their neck in your home, your insurance policy will not cover you for that break, or anything else over. And he said, I don't know of an insurance policy in this state that will cover you if you run an Airbnb. So my concern is, if Jim and Peggy rent their house, and they are not covered by their own insurance agency, and I don't know if they are or they aren't, and someone drowns in that pool, and this town knows that house is against our ordinance, which it is, because it is being run as a boarding house, someone drowns, some little kid drowns in that pool, you guys are responsible. You're gonna be held liable. We're all gonna be held liable. It's not a good scene. It is not why I moved here. It's not why my grandparents moved here in 1930. You don't want a boarding house running in my front field. You just don't. I don't care who it is. And it worries me. It worries me for the speed. I was coming out of my house to go to a service. Someone passed me. I slammed on the brakes at the end of my driveway. She waved. I thought, that's funny. Not the first time that's happened, certainly, because we're on a hill. But I ran into her later at the place I was going, and she said, that was me. I'm sorry I must hit you. I was coming from my Airbnb to get to where I was going. And she's from out of town, although she grew up out here. So this is the kind of thing. I have 3 dogs. I don't have any kids. I walk. I don't like people creeping around the hill. I don't like the traffic. It's a rural country town. It is not a city where you rent out stuff like that. Somebody here told me that they're having issues in the hills with kids, and now Airbnb is known for this. Instead of trashing your own home, you rent out an Airbnb, and you trash that, and you leave. So they're having an issue up in the hills now, with people just renting out an Airbnb for a night and trashing it. So each little enclave in the hills is coming up with their own ruling. And the woman that told me this said her enclave now won't rent for more than a year, an empty unit. And this is not just, I know there's, in Old Wick, they won't let you have Airbnbs. They just say, absolute zip. No, absolutely not. So, I don't know why we're dragging our feet. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. This is way too rural of an area for that. So anything I can do to help research, go to the state, you know, anything I can help you guys do, I'm more than happy to do.
Thank you for coming out.
Hi, my name is Rachel Rosenthal. I live at 390 Cedar Ridge Road. And I really came here to listen tonight, and I'm glad that I did, and I'm glad I listened to everyone first. I share a driveway with Jim and Peggy Lyons. So I'm 390, they're 270, but we have the same driveway. I have a right-of-way on the driveway, and I'm further down the driveway. And we have been neighbors for 20 years, and they're good people, and they've been good neighbors. And they started this Airbnb, I guess it was May or June. And the first group they had there, I had no idea what was going on. I thought Peggy had gotten involved with some kind of charity environmental group because there was about 20 cars on the front lawn, and there was a group called Nike, not Nike shoe, not Nike sneaker, it was Nike Environmentals, like a South African company that, or group that came there and rented the house. She wasn't there, but I thought for sure she was. But this group was there. They had like some kind of symposium, whatever. They were there for the whole weekend. There were people walking up the driveway. I was very polite because I thought she was having an event. But they came up the driveway toward my house. Now, I haven't been living in my house for the past year because I'm renovating, so I'm living around the corner. But I've been watching. I'm there every day because I run a business. I have horses boarded on my property, and I ride and train, and I'm a professional horse person. So I'm also very much aware of the traffic on the road because I ride my horses almost every day up and down the road. So I have a different perspective than you, Bill, on the road because I'm on a horse every day, and the traffic on the road, even before this Airbnb, I'm so aware of how fast people go past me. But now that they're there, and I know strange cars, I know who's the normal traffic, I know when it's a contractor, I know when a garbage truck is coming, or that crazy mailman, I get off the road. I get into a driveway. There's no stopping him. But, right? But when there's strangers, 2 days ago, there was a guy with Colorado plates. I was in my car. I wasn't even on a horse. He came flying up the road so fast, and I've never had to do this. I stood on my horn, I stuck my arm out the window, and I stopped him. He stopped, and I yelled at him. I said, "Slow down, you're going too fast on this road." And he said, "Okay," and he slammed on the gas and kept going. And I called Ryder. I said, "Who was that guy?" And I couldn't.
I had seen him the day before.
So I don't know if he was at the Airbnb. Jim and Peg have people parking behind the house now, so that I am not supposed to see, but there were people last weekend from Massachusetts. I know that because they came to my house at 9 in the morning to ask me where Jim's house was, because Jim hasn't put a number on his house. So nobody knows where their house is, so everybody's always asking. So that is an issue. The traffic on the road. I go out with my 11-year-old daughter on her pony. We have boarders that are not professional riders. It's scary when people, even at 25 miles an hour, if a car comes by you, even I know that's the law, it's still too fast, but they come flying. And there has been increased traffic and increased speed. That is one issue. One thing I do want to mention, and I didn't think of this until it was mentioned, little kids driving the pool. There's no fence around that pool. Now, I don't think they have to have a fence around the pool. If you've had an old pool and your grandfathered in, you don't have to, because when I moved into my house, there wasn't a fence around the pool either, and I didn't have to put a fence. When my daughter was born, I put a fence around that pool. They don't have little kids there, but now they're renting a house with little kids coming. So it's a huge issue. So that's pretty much all I have to add. But we have had people coming up my driveway, turning around on the grass, and it has been a disturbance. And I've been trying to talk with Jim directly, working this out. I don't know. I'm assuming the town, if he's doing something against the law, I have to believe that you're going to address it by the law and deal with him in that way. I'm going to let you guys handle that. And like Ryder, I would support in any way. But on a personal level, it is quite difficult and disturbing. And I have not been able to communicate with Jim directly. They're pretty set on making this work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Maria Nucci, 200 Cedar Ridge Road. I have a devil of a problem. And the problem is, I've got the most wonderful neighbors that you could ever imagine. I've lived here for 45 years. I was the young one when I came, and now I'm the oldest one. I can tell you each one of them. I have nothing to say. I can only tell you what I see, and that is my property adjoins both Rachel's property and Jim's property. All right, I've seen nothing. I've heard nothing, and that doesn't mean it isn't there. It may be, but I haven't seen it, and I'm there all the time, and I'm outside all the time. On the road, I haven't seen any traffic. I'm only telling you the truth. I'm not that I'm trying to go against what anybody has said first and whatever. I just haven't seen all these people. I haven't heard any noise. What can I say? I just want to say one thing. This is a lovely group of people. Everybody should have neighbors like my neighbors, all right, that are on Cedar Ridge Road. And with the new one now that we have, where are you? Is there anything that we can do as a group? Could we get Jim? Could we get Rachel? Could we get Mrs. First to sit down and see? I don't know what the law is, but I've got to tell you something. I worry because I'm a Republican. And when I know that I'm paying taxes or that people are paying taxes for their property, I'm not waiting for anybody to tell them what to do with it. So, you know, but I want everybody to be happy. So I'm going to sit down now and I'm going to say, before we make any decisions, let's find out more about it, please, because I just heard about it. I'm not aware of anything going on. So could we get the people together? Could we find out what the law says? What is allowed? How we could do it? Is there any way of making some limitation to the number of people that come in? I don't know. But I was going to say, please, let's not right away make vote anything in or out. Let's find out more about it so that each one of us, each person here is satisfied. Each person is satisfied, because I've got to tell you something, and I'm going to sit down now. Nobody has neighbors like we have. Nobody has a street like we have. And when I see the horses go by, I don't know if I don't get out and bow. So, you know something, let's not jump to any conclusions and find out more of what is possible and how both sides can be satisfied. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nucci.
I'd like to say one more thing.
Well, can we get everybody through that wants to speak, and then if you want a second bite at the apple, let's do that. So, is there anyone else that wants to be heard on this issue? Okay, go ahead, give it a second shot. Please come up to the mic because we're recording it.
A neighbor of mine on Lavington Road received a letter in his mailbox. He was going to rent the Lionses for a wedding that his daughter was having in July. And a letter signed anonymously, a resident of Cedar Ridge Road, and it said, "Please do not rent the Lions as Airbnb for your daughter's wedding on July 14th." And he just got that. And he called me thinking it was me, and I said, "I've known you for 40 years, it would be anonymous." So clearly, it's an issue. It's gotten, I think, a little out of hand, and I think Maria's right, and I do know that we've been on this, Liz and I, for quite some time, and I do know what the law is. But I think maybe a little explanation from you guys would be helpful to the audience here tonight.
Thank you.
All right. I will ask for any other public comment. Okay. I will make a little bit of comment and open it up to the rest of the Township Committee. You know, much is made because there was an article a couple weeks ago in the Bernardsville News. I know this is something that has come to the attention of our zoning officer, and he has handled it or has begun to handle it. I don't know if it's wended its way all the way through the due process, but that's probably the legal end of it. I know when I was asked by the newspaper, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about rentals in town. A lot of it is more that I had heard about had to do with the hills. Some of it had to do with speculation on the golf tournament last summer, which will turn into a golf tournament, I guess, in what, 3 summers? 4 summers, something like that. And there were people that were saying, you know, maybe I'd like to rent my house out for a week or 2 to a golf pro and his entourage. Okay. When you get a personal dispute with a neighbor, the town's job is to see what the law is and react to that. When it's a personal dispute with a neighbor, and I'm not going to ask questions in open session here about what did you say, who said what to whom, but I would encourage you to at first deal with it neighbor to neighbor. See if you can get something resolved at that level. But if that doesn't get resolved, then come to us. I think we appreciate you guys coming to us, because we can't be everywhere. We can't hear everything. We don't know what's going on every street. I think there's been a lot more discontent on Cedar Ridge Road than has certainly made it, at least to my ears. So when I personally commented to the newspaper, I said, well, where are we at with this, was what I was asked. And I said, well, I think where we're at is fact-finding. I don't think, at least one opinion is that we're going to tonight come up with an ordinance or come up with a zoning change. Not a big fan of doing it for a one-off violation anyway. I think that ends being overreacting. But there may be enough that it's worth looking at this in the bigger picture to see if there's an issue throughout the entire township. Do we have problems with, despite what the address is? So, from my point of view, I'm very happy to hear your comments, positive, negative, and in between, because I think we have to take that into account. I don't think we're going to arrive at a conclusion tonight or probably at the next meeting, but I think it's maybe something worth putting on our agenda to start turning the rock and figure out, well, is an issue? To what severity? How do we want to handle it? Do we want to set a policy for the town, and what should that policy be?
But Mayor, on the, so the zoning officer did take some action. Do we have an update on what that action is?
I can update you. I'm not aware if the residents are aware of it, but there was a lengthy cease and desist letter sent by the zoning officer. That's on file with the clerk, and you're certainly entitled to view that letter. I'll candidly admit that I had a large part in drafting the letter that the zoning officer signed. I view, based upon the allegations, that the conduct, if proven true and correct, is a violation of the zoning ordinance. Mr. Price's letter effectively was a cease and desist letter. I subsequently had a conversation with the attorney for the Lions, as Mr. Bisagno, and candidly told him that his clients ran a great risk of being issued a zoning summons if they continued the conduct. And he arrogantly said that, in his opinion, it was legal. So here's what I would suggest, since you've all come here tonight. Municipal court violations need witnesses. Because if the zoning officer issues a summons for violating the zoning ordinance, he needs to be able to come to court Mr. and Mrs. First, or Ms. Seabarth, and I know I worked with you on acquisition of the easement with the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, so I'm familiar with you and Michael. He needs people willing to come in and testify about the behavior that's occurring. So I certainly would encourage all of you after this meeting, if you're willing to testify in court, to contact Mr. Price and indicate a willingness to do that against your neighbors and describe the conduct that's been continuing. Because that's necessary and needed for a judge to make a determination if in fact there is a violation of the zoning ordinance. Mr. First, I believe you're a lawyer
I am a lawyer, yes.
of long standing in Somerset County, certainly familiar with you, so you're aware that hearsay testimony by a zoning officer or what's published as comments on Airbnb review won't stand up in court. So again, if you're concerned with that, the township is certainly taking the first step with a cease and desist. The property owner's on notice that we consider it a violation of the zoning ordinance. We need you folks to go in and talk to Mr. Price and say you're willing to go to court.
John, what was the nature of the asserted ordinance that was violated?
It's a residential district, single family. Based upon the allegations, it's being run as a short-term boarding house, hotel, motel, which is not permitted in that zone.
Okay.
Is that true for all the residential districts in town, or is it just that district in particular?
I would consider it accurate for all the residential districts in town.
Okay.
Any other comments from members of the committee?
I just want to chime in and piggyback on what Mr. First had mentioned, that this is something that technology is getting out in front of the law on. The New Jersey League of Municipalities had their annual conference this year. I attended it. Mr. Jacobs and I attended one of the seminars about this very issue, and it was about the internet age and how is that dovetailing, if you will, with, you know, codified rules and regs that are on municipal records. And it's a problem that is not insular and discrete for here. Across the state, people are dealing, and towns are dealing with this, and it gets down to something even like Megan's Law. You have residents and tenants, you have to make registrations so the township and the residents know who's living where. And with this type of rental, you don't have compliance with that, so that's another problem, at least I have. And it's not necessarily a Cedar Ridge issue, it's just it's an overarching issue with Airbnb, where you have transient guests in and out, occupying, living here in our township, and we don't know who they are. So I sort of share your thought, and I think that at the very least we need to think about updating our rules, regs, ordinances, so that we are in compliance with the 21st century and the advent of this internet business that just keeps coming up. It seems like every year there's something else that's internet-based that can just streamline what normally would be paper applications and, you know, disclosures to the township, and so we understand what's going on within our municipality. I also share the comment from the Dr. Nucci that we need to, you know, do a fact-finding expedition here, but you know, it's not something that we take lightly, and certainly we will consider it. But that's really my take on it. I think that we need to get a better handle on who actually is inhabiting our township.
And just to follow up on the seminar that Mr. Stevenson mentioned, so after the article came out, I too had reached out to the League of Municipalities to find out if there was any follow-up from the seminar that Doug and I attended, and if there was any further actions that municipalities were taking, or that the League had taken a position on with regard to Airbnb type ordinances. And so I got the same ordinances. I believe that it was Mrs. First had mentioned. And I did have a conversation or two with the in-house attorney down at the League, and he said that by and large, the municipalities that are tackling the issue of dealing with Airbnb and the, you know, it's not just Airbnb, it's VRBO, it's HomeAway, and some of the other online services, they're taking across the board, rather than dissecting and saying 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times are allowed. They're essentially coming with prohibitions, saying, you know, the short-term leasing or renting is a year, 6 months, 30 days. That's what the other municipalities are doing. Doug, if you remember at the seminar, it was the city manager or city administrator for Asbury Park. Yeah, so, I mean, Judy, I mean, we are not Asbury Park. I mean, maybe if we get the LPGA event or a PGA event or something along those lines, or a USCT event, there might be people looking for short-term stays. We're certainly not Asbury Park, but, you know, Judy, it may be a good idea to reach out to the manager for Asbury Park and see how they confronted these issues. I believe that what they did is, I believe they actually reached out to Airbnb, but I think they were looking at it from a taxing issue rather than a prohibition issue.
Well, but Asbury Park is a
Right.
you know, a short community. You expect short-term
You
rentals in a
expect
place
short-term.
like that.
But the thing is, the short-term is also eroding some of the hotel opportunities they have there. So people going around the hotels and avoiding the taxes.
You know,
and Asbury itself is losing out on revenue.
Their concern, as I recall it, was that it was the inability to monitor who's in, who's out, and that there are reporting requirements, whether that, you know, criminal statutes or otherwise, that the owner, the landlord, has to make disclosure as to who is occupying that unit. And I don't think that that's being followed with Airbnbs and the like, and not just in this town, I think across the board, because it's one-off, it's in and out.
Right, and similarly, this is not, you know, if we are going to take an approach on the Airbnb type stays, you know, I have had discussions with Dawn March, who is the Hills Village.
Louder, please.
What's that? Louder?
Louder.
Louder, okay. Dawn, can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Okay. So Dawn March from the Hills Village Master Association, you know, they've been looking at this issue for, I think, a couple of years now. And they have condo rules against it, but frankly, she said she's concerned about their ability to enforce. So if we're going to take a hard look at this, I think it's not just the folks from Cedar Ridge, but I think we also have to talk to the condo associations and see what their approach is. And make sure that we have a township coordinated approach on however we regulate this.
All right. Anybody else? One more bite at the apple. I know we do have a public comment at the end, but so you don't have to stick around to listen to all of our other ordinances and whatnot. Is there anybody else that wishes to make a comment?
Mr. Bell did mention...
Please come to the microphone, because this is not just to be heard, but it's to be recorded as well.
Mr. Bell did mention that when someone leaves an Airbnb, he is supposed to go and inspect the fire things, and he said there's no way we can do that with Airbnb, because we don't know when they're in and when they're out. He said it's very dangerous. Just to add that to the pot.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right, we will move on from public comments.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you all for
Thank you
coming.
for your input. Monthly reports from our subcommittee chairs. We'll start with Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I had a Jacobus Vanderveer House meeting since last meeting. Their capital campaign still continues. They've had a couple, I don't want to say setbacks, but some negative responses to some of the grant applications that they've been deferred. So that has sort of hit a bump in the road, but the powers that be are confident that we'll get it back on track. They continue to work through programming. I would encourage folks interested in that to check out the JVH website. It's got all the programming on there. There's some really good stuff coming up. And then there was also a discussion about the trailer. The thought there is that it's unlikely that the barn will be taken out of the trailer by the extension that we've given them, and then they sort of asked me as to what our position was, and I said, well, I don't want to speak for all of you, but my sense of it is that it's our preference that that trailer not continue to exist where it is. So they're actively looking at places to move it, and I don't know whether we have any particular thoughts that you'd like me to take back to them for next meeting on that, but the options, I guess, as they're kicking it around is, do you take the existing trailer and sort of put a new tieback, cover on it with some different message, like don't forget the barn or something, or you actually move the trailer physically to another place at the park that maybe can't be seen from 206. There's a general agreement that it's time to get a facelift.
Would you like it to say farmer's market?
In time, yes.
All right.
Or Doug's Park. We could have Doug's Park. We could solve 2 issues at one time.
So, let me know, and if you don't know right now, I'm not looking to put you on the spot, but if you have an idea or a suggestion as to where that trailer might be better served, if it's not in the location where it is now, please, they're looking for suggestions.
Do they have any sense of how effective that campaign is? I mean, I wouldn't think driving along, it might raise awareness, but does it help raise money?
I think at first it did. But that's sort of the thought that it's now sort of seen and forgotten at the same time. You drive past it every day, that's why maybe a new message on there. But in any event, it needs to get a little bit of a facelift.
Have they thought about maybe whether it be on the truck or someplace else, a fundraiser thermometer? You see those things that say where we are on the goal, because usually that at least elicits some reaction, because every time, if it moves up a little quickly or not so quickly, hopefully that gives people some incentive.
Yes,
but,
that's not that exact thing, but that's sort of similar. It was mentioned, and I think it was right at the time that we were going for the Somerset County grant, then quite frankly, I think we thought we were going to get, and it didn't come through, so that sort of got, stepped to the side, but it is something worth discussing. The idea there was that it was going to be a first major infusion. It's not insignificant because of the historic nature of the barn and who has to, I guess, the manner in which it has to be constructed, so it's a pretty pricey proposition to put this thing up. The other thing is that, you got to check to make sure that there's no damage. It's been in the trailer for quite some time. You worry about dry rot. So that's coming in the spring.
All right.
But that's my report.
Mr. Hickey.
Mayor, thank you. I have no updates.
Mr. Jacobs.
No updates, except we'll discuss farmers market under old business coming up in a little bit.
Ms. Santucci.
I attended the Fall Fest meeting last week with Judy, held at the fire department over here, back on Miller. A lot of new exciting things for Fall Fest. Possibly, hate to give away some secrets, but possibly some maybe television football games in the beer and wine tent, trying to set that up. I'm going to try to talk to AT&T, have something for maybe some of the people who like to watch football during that season, since it's October 27th this year. But it was a good meeting. Everybody's very, very enthusiastic, and looking forward to incorporating the farmers market possibly as well, since it will be a huge success. And people will be missing it because it'll be stopping sometime in September and then back in hopefully October at Fall Fest.
Right.
So we're looking at some kind of inter-advertising opportunities and reminders that Fall Fest is coming up in September into October.
All right.
So exciting. And hopefully far away, because I'm waiting for it to get warm before it gets cold again.
We had a land use board meeting last week where we had one application which was approved. I won't get into the details of that, but it was one of the shorter meetings I've attended. That same night, the Bedminster School had its international night, which I will say was extremely well attended and went very well. So if you ever get a chance to go to one of those, they're a lot of fun. I know they have their, don't we have a basketball game coming up this month?
Is that the 8th grade game?
Yeah. I was hoping that the coach would go.
No, I'm not the coach.
You're not the coach this year?
It's Mr. Connolly and Mr. Brown this year.
Oh, well, that's...
Last year was my hurrah.
Oh, okay. Anyway, the 8th grade faculty basketball game is always a good time, and it's a nice social event, so if you get a chance, come on out for that. That's all I have. Ms. Sullivan, Administrator's Report?
A couple things. March 1st, new website was live. Check it out. If you see something, say something. See something that's missing, see something that's not right, let us know. We're still tweaking and adding and moving things. The old website is still up. So if you're...
Where?
It's probably till the end of the week.
But I mean, don't you have to go to a different address for it?
We did. We pointed all our stuff to the new
Oh.
website, but the old website is still running.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how accurate it is, or I don't know how that works. Maybe Mr. Hickey can explain it to me, but they haven't turned it off yet. So I can go on my computer and I can still get to it, but when I bring it up on my phone, it goes to the new website. So I'm really confused. But it should be turned off by Friday, I'm told. The Shared Municipal Court, I don't know if we have a date yet.
We don't.
Mr. Mance is working very hard at making some last-minute updates. The state still has to come and install their computers, but we're hoping
Middle towards the end of the month.
mid-March, end of March, to move over here.
Weather permitting.
Weather permitting, of course. Last Tuesday, the CFO, the tax collector, and myself, we had a outreach from Pequot Gladstone Bank, who is one of our banks, and we met with them. Weren't really sure what they wanted to talk about, and they brought with them a new vendor that they have a partnership with, and they're going to their customers and their clients and offering through this new partnership to provide electronic payments for property taxes for their customers, for their towns. I thought how timely with our new website. So they would provide credit card, debit card, Venmo, PayPal, what's that new one, Zelle. They would all be available on our website. We're going to start with property taxes and sewer taxes, but then it could be expanded to court fines, dog licenses, cat licenses, you know, and the like.
And charitable contributions?
Probably.
Perhaps charitable contributions?
We have to research what our policy would be as far as there is a fee for using credit cards, especially I think Discover Card and American Express are even a little bit higher. We are allowed to pass that on to the user in a convenience fee. So we have to kind of talk about what our policy might be and do a little research of what some neighboring towns do. But we hope to have something in place by maybe the end of May, early June, before the tax bills go out. So.
And have you reached out to Civic Live to see how this program would fit within the structure of the website?
They have a number of vendors that they've worked with. They said they can pretty much, their team can coordinate with anybody. Once we get a little more information, I'm going to have this group reach out to Civic Live, make sure that it's going to be very seamless. We're not quite there yet. We just had our first meeting on Tuesday, but it sounded very promising.
Okay, great.
It's not on my report, but before you, there's a little blurb about Pluckerman Schoolhouse Park, or Pluckerman Schoolhouse. We just found out, John Mance, actually, maybe you want to tell them what you found out, John.
So apparently the Center for Contemporary Art dropped off a little note to Judy last week, and then she handed it off to me because it looked like we may need to install a sign. So as part of their grant application they provided to the county for the work that they were doing on the property, as a requirement of that, they are required to put up a historic sign in front of the property. I guess it was narrated by the county themselves. The sign was to be delivered today. It was delivered today. They did not take delivery of the sign because there was damage to the crate, so we couldn't even see what it really looked like. I didn't even know that this was even there. I asked them, did anybody approve this? They said the historic committee did, but I don't think the historic committee did. I think it went through the county at the county level, and they just did it.
Tom D'Amico.
So Tom D'Amico. So he had called me on Friday before the storm hit to try to schedule a on-site meeting to see where the sign was supposed to go. So the wording you have in front of you, I believe, is what you have, right?
Yes, they have it.
Is what this is supposed to say. So
It's already in draft, so.
nobody.
So we hope we like it. Well, I just know it took us over a year to get the one on Hillside Avenue, and this one just came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
This is the,
to my knowledge, it hasn't come
I also found
before.
out that JVH, as part of their grant application,
Had to do the same.
is required to have a similar sign installed on the property as well. And they submitted some verbiage of what they thought might be appropriate, and the county said, no, thank you, we'll put it together for you. So they don't know what's coming. They haven't even seen what the verbiage might be. But apparently the sign is soon to be also coming. And they wanted it put out by the road, and our suggestion was that it would be over by the flag and the entrance, the walkway and the circle. I don't know. But
Maybe we should reach out and have a discussion with Tom D'Amico just to kind of enlarge the
So
communication.
do we get to put it up, or do we have the privilege of putting it up, or do we have any say-so?
I'm not sure who's putting it up. I believe that we're probably putting up, just like we did one on Hillside, but then I was told that the county personnel may be putting it up. I'm not even sure, so the meeting is yet to be scheduled. As soon as I know what the meeting date is, I will advise the administrator and let her know, and she can reach out to whoever.
But
And
Historic didn't know anything about it, right?
No, to my knowledge, it never was on the agenda, never came up, because we would have probably still been talking about it a little bit.
Better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission.
Yeah.
So apparently
Yeah, the
this
wording
is our-
could have been a little more concise, and
Well, my only comment is when they talk about the Art Association and the later Center for Contemporary Art, I mean, that kind of dates the sign. So in 100 years, maybe the Center for Contemporary Art will still be called that, but it might have 5 more uses between now and then, and anyway, I don't know. But it's in brass now.
And lastly, I just wanted to ask the chief and John for any update they might have on the storm from Friday. Have any pending?
As of, unless they clean it up this afternoon, the only road we have closed currently is Spook Hollow Road with a tree that's hung up into another tree on power lines. We have power lines down in certain areas, but they're more off the roadways. It's more in easements, more or less. So, and some along the roadways, but we didn't have as much problem as our neighboring municipalities did at this point. We're very lucky to have that. Even though we did have a number of outages, I think we came across pretty much unscathed.
Can we really believe, I mean, I've been monitoring the numbers that we've been getting from JCP&L. Do we think those numbers are really accurate?
they're staying very static.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
So they're, it doesn't.
I asked everybody as they walked in before this meeting,
Yeah.
and they're on one of the roads or in the part of the town that should have a lot of outages. And I haven't,
It says 453.
haven't met anybody that has an outage.
I don't believe the numbers that you see are the numbers, because nobody's been calling you to say, you know, when's my power gonna go back up?
I got one person squawking, and obviously they're in a bad situation.
And the area-
Doug, how about your street?
My house has power, my next door neighbor does not. So.
Is it like half of your street, or
Yep.
is it?
It's exactly half the
All right.
street.
So those numbers are probably accurate.
Yeah.
So, well, I did speak with Rob Walton from JCP&L yesterday afternoon, actually, since Maria reminded me I'm probably not close enough to the mic. So I asked Rob that very question. I said, look, you know, you're showing that we have 458 residents, but residential units out. And I said, frankly, I would imagine if we had 458 houses out, we would be hearing a lot more than what we're hearing. And he gave me an explanation that confirms it is not accurate. That they take the information, and this is what is explained to me. They identify, for example, they may identify Ski Hill, and they may just say, okay, Ski Hill is out. And they may not know the specificity, whether it's the left half or the right half, or it's the entire street or a third of the street. They just know there's an outage, so they report the outage. And then based upon wherever that line leads to, they have a unit or customer count along that line. And so they say, if that area has an outage, that must be the number of units out. So it is probably inflated on the high side, not on the low side, but on the high side. For example, they also, on that same list, they had Old Stonehouse. Spoke to Jim Christie yesterday, and he said he looked out his window, went left, went right, saw lights up and down, He did not see one house that was
Old Stone
without
House,
power.
Old Stone House did have wires down across by the cul-de-sac, so it could be just service lines for those couple houses. So
Right.
it could not affect the entire street. It's going to affect
Right, but
one or
if
two
you
houses.
look at JCP&L's
Right.
outage, they're attributing it. So I think the 458 number is not accurate, and if it is an outage for a line that's hitting one house, perhaps when it gets reported, and in JCP&L's defense, they're being inundated with outage reports, so they don't have the intel or the manpower to go and see whether or not that outage is two houses or the entirety of the street. But Rob Walton did say that today that they expected to come in with additional personnel, make those calls to the affected areas to see where the outages were and how many units. So maybe we'll actually start seeing those numbers come down. It may not be a reflection of repairs or restoration, it may just be a reflection of better information.
Yeah, and on that call, Larry, and for anybody listening, they said that for 90%, it would be Tuesday by 11:30 at night. For everyone, Wednesday, 11:30 at night.
Just in
But
time
now-
for the...
Just in time for the news schedule.
We need to ask John what the forecast is.
So that's all I have.
Okay.
So JCP&L's in the area, because they just pulled firm work out for 500 Blackbird Road, which is one of the roads I was just talking about.
All right.
Replacing poles.
John, what does it look like for Tuesday into Wednesday? What does it look like for Tuesday into Wednesday, the next storm, weather-wise?
I've heard anywhere from 1 inch to 18 inches.
Great. I hear in Morris it's 5 to 10, so...
So the snow looks like it's going to be mainly on Wednesday, probably mid-morning throughout the rush hour is going to be the worst on Wednesday.
The
Which
PM
is
rush, the
gonna-
morning or the evening rush hour?
Evening rush hour.
Okay.
Morning, you're going to have a little bit, and it's going to be interesting. And then they're talking about another nor'easter for Monday also.
Really?
On top of
There's two more
Oh, that
coming.
one I didn't know
I
that.
did not know that.
March, in like a lion.
All right.
Well, no, there's one more item on the administrative
What
report.
about Trudy? So we have a township mascot that has been here on township property actually for quite some time. And the employees have nicknamed our township mascot, who is a turkey, have nicknamed her Trudy. I'm not sure where that came from.
Trudy,
Trudy,
not to be confused with,
Turkey.
Judy, or Trudy.
Right, right.
Trina, or anybody, but it's,
So the Trina and the Judy put together?
maybe, I don't know, but, the employees came up with the name, and
Not
she's out
tasty?
there every day.
I thought that we were an equestrian town,
Well,
horse town.
I just
Mascot
texted
is
by-
a turkey?
I just texted Diane Gibson, who is on Elizabeth Lane. She is still without power.
yes, she does not have power.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so this turkey is taking up residence and seems to enjoy watching its reflection in the code cars that are back there, because that's where she was all day today.
All right.
She stays under the solar.
by the way, she's a good-looking turkey.
Has Trudy made it to the website yet? Maybe it's
We
time?
have her picture ready to go.
All
All right.
We replaced her with the information about JCP&L.
All right.
We'll get her up there.
All right. All right, well, let's move on to discussion of introduced ordinances, of which we have none. But we can go to an introduction of ordinances, and we have one ordinance to introduce tonight, and that is ordinance 2018-02. This ordinance amends the general ordinance entitled, General Ordinances, Chapter 10, entitled Fire Prevention. This ordinance amends sections 10-1.2 through 1-8 of Chapter 10. The public hearing for this ordinance is scheduled for March 19th, 7 p.m. in these chambers. Any comments or questions before I ask for an introduction? All right, can I get a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, that was easy.
Any problem with the date of March 19th? You feel
No
we're
problem.
good?
We're good.
See, Tom, that wasn't hard at all.
Aren't you glad he stayed?
Public hearing on ordinances, we have none. Consent agenda. We have nothing on the consent agenda.
No.
So we go to resolutions. We have Resolution 2018-031, amending Resolution 2008-022 regarding dog park rules. Any comments or questions? Well, I will start with one. What's the difference? What have we changed? Do we have any input from our rec committee on that? Do we know what changed?
There is
What
a
did we
red line
change?
there on the second page.
Right.
It appears that the rule's been updated such that children under 9 are no longer encouraged to be at the dog park. Or, excuse me, that was removed and been replaced by the fact that they don't want puppies under 4 months of age at the dog park.
Or, well, it just says prohibited in the leash-free area.
Excuse me, right.
Is there a non-leash-free area? Or does it just keep puppies out
I think
entirely?
it's referring to the entire fenced-in area, I would presume.
Yeah, I think when you bring your dog to the park, it's expected that the dog's on a leash, and then when you bring the dog inside the park,
you can,
like River Road
leash.
Park versus the dog park.
Right.
And when they're inside the dog park, they can be off the leash, but evidently not puppies.
Any comments as to the origins or the reasons why we're replacing 11 on the old one with the 11 on the new one? Any, just on the comments?
I know for a fact they kind of polled the rec committee and some interested users, and Robin collected the feedback and assimilated it, and those were the recommendations.
Mm-hmm. Well, the old number 11, I don't know how you can enforce a strongly discouraged. Either they are or they aren't. And children under 9 probably play with dogs. So I get that.
So what's the rationale for the new 11?
I think there was concern with respect to inoculations of the puppies, but I can't be certain. It may also have to do with the size. Doug, do you have any?
But wouldn't that be taken care of by item 7? Dogs must display a current license and be properly inoculated, so that would be, they should be. Unless there's some concern that puppies under 4 months of age, will be
At greater risk
shown
of
for
injury.
That's
the
right.
big dogs.
That's right.
Could be.
Yeah, puppies under 4 do not need a license.
Or 4 months of
4
age.
months.
What's the, what enforcement power do we have? None?
Can we enforce these rules?
Or the
I think
change?
they're incorporated into your ordinance, or it's a violation of your resolution, so. I mean, a resolution is good for 1 year. It has to be renewed on an annual basis. If you want to codify it into an ordinance, then it becomes more permanent. But still, a violation of a resolution is a violation of a resolution.
And what does that mean?
I suppose you issue someone a summons.
And violators will be reported to the chief's non-emergency phone number.
There you have it. The police will show up.
All right.
Just keep in mind that when we change these rules, we're changing the signs. That means there's money that's to be spent. And every time we change the rules, we change signs, if they're gonna be posted. I had a request to take the existing dog park signs and put them inside the dog park itself, which I did. Now we're gonna change all these, and now I have to change the signs out.
Well, what's the sign made of? I mean, this is
It's
not written
aluminum
in
sign.
brass.
You know, it's an aluminum sign, but
Okay.
it's part of that list of, laundry list of things that rec has put together for open space.
Right.
Funds.
And it says ordinance 0318. I haven't looked in your book, but I'm assuming if you look in your book, there's a section. Judy, there's a section in the book that has 0318 codified.
Ordinance 0318, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So actually, it is an ordinance.
So I guess John's point to us is if we're going to change the wording, make sure we change the wording for good. And we'll be working on sign number 3. Right?
That's right.
If everybody's happy with the way that it's written, then that's fine. It's been that way for a while, so we're gonna move on.
Any other comments or questions? All right, well, I'll ask for a motion. Moved.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I thought we had at least one roof out of it.
All right, Resolution 2018-032, authorizing the current fund transfer of funds in the amount of $15,000. Any comments or questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you.
Approval of the bill list. Can I get a motion to approve the bill list pending the approval of individual invoices?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, discussion items. How about if we move this discussion item to the very end? And let's go into new business, old business, and we'll get back to the budget final update, and then we can make the budget the final thing before we go into executive.
Good.
New business, I think, I would like to just see us put short-term rentals under new business, and we'll just get working on that. Doesn't
Agree.
mean we have to come up with anything in the next week, 2 or 3 meetings, but let's chew on it and see. Doug, do you want to do a little research on that? Sure. Maybe Larry, you want to?
Well,
Sure.
I have all the ordinances that those folks were talking about, so you really don't have to do too much.
Super. You can send them along.
Yeah, I'll just send them to you.
Thank you, John.
Old business, 130 Hillside, anything new?
I heard from one of the interested parties actually today. The assessor is still working on the fair market value, which is what we spoke about with Mr. Bellardo. The second interested party I have not heard from, and I asked the first interested party to contact him and get in touch with me.
Okay.
So then I confirm that there is interest. I didn't want, only heard from one. So I'm waiting for that. So he said he would do that.
Pony Farm, anything new?
Just waiting for our estimate.
All right. Farmers Market.
Farmers Market. Thank you, Mayor. On, it was last Monday, Natalia Herbowich and I attended the New Jersey Council of Farmers and Communities, NJCFC, just in case you're looking for a new acronym to learn. And this is an organization that is coordinated through the State Ag Board, and it is largely comprised of farmers and community representatives, and frankly, its purpose is to coordinate for farmers markets that are run by municipalities. And it was interesting as so I walked in, there were 2 people talking about the Bedminster Farmers Market. Did you hear about the Bedminster Farmers Market coming this year? And one of the persons that was in the conversation, turns out, Crady Pachori, 65 Somerset Terrace. She is a Bedminster resident with a farm in town and very interested in participating in the farmers market. And it was just really by going to this meeting that we discovered her. She discovered us and got all her information, and she's very interested and lives right around the corner from you guys, and very excited about it. So there was some good information that was put out there, ways of using the New Jersey Council of Farmers and Communities. They do advertising, they coordinate with Jersey Fresh. They also help vet and source the farmers. So to confirm that the material that is being sold at the farmers market is in fact Jersey, and if it is being marketed as coming from New Jersey, that they actually vet those farmers and vendors and confirm that those are that they're selling Jersey produce. I'm going to take this back to the farmers market meeting. We have a meeting this week on Wednesday, and also since we last spoke, John Bardo prepared some vendors licensing agreements that we would distribute to the potential vendors and farmers who would participate, and we'll probably finalize that hopefully this week. That's the update.
All right. All righty. Let's move on to the budget. Judy?
Okay, I'm going to try and make this short and sweet. Debbie Stern and I consulted with the auditor. You should have a sheet that shows you projected comparative statement. This is an update of our surplus, our projected surplus for 2018. This is not in your book. This was put into place tonight. Spoke with the auditor today. He ran a very conservative projection for this year. Since we were proposing to use more of our surplus this year to fund our budget than we have in the past, he suggested that we just see where we'll be at the end of this year if we do that. And basically, with his conservative numbers, we will probably end up approximately $60,000 less at the end of this year in surplus than we have now. Okay. That's very conservative. We do have some other investments and things that could do better than originally projected, so it actually could be better than that. If we were to remain at the same number that we've used in the past, the 1.6 million, we would probably come in about $80,000 higher than we had this year. So, just to give you an idea where this will put us if we do choose to go with the additional surplus. Okay. It's not critical by any means, but just so you do understand, we will probably not be increasing. We would be somewhat status quo. So, he also did call down to DCA to see if using recreation trust funds could be used for part-time seasonal employees that help run Camp Bedminster. He was told it can. We had talked about one of our goals at the last meeting was to get to a 0% increase in the amount to be raised by taxes. In order to do that, we had to come up with some additional funding rather than putting that to the taxpayer. One of those ideas was using the amount of salaries, which this year is $55,000, and pay for that from the Recreation Trust. We were given permission to do that. However, when we ran an analysis, and you have an analysis in your packet, you'll see if we, from 2007 till now, if we put in the Recreation Trust balance and subtract from that the part-time seasonal employee salaries, our average is about $15,000 to $20,000 to the plus. Okay, so can we sustain $55,000 in salaries, not without raising fees significantly? So it was suggested that we could probably reimburse ourselves for 1 year, $50,000 to go to current fund would be miscellaneous revenue for this year, and then maybe supplement $5,000 this year, or maybe $10,000 going forward in a budget season. Not the full amount, but we could certainly sustain 5 to 10.
Well, one of the things about this that's kind of, and it's always kind of stuck in my craw a little bit, because is that it was originally set up, and the idea was to show that what came into rec went out of rec. Okay, so we put in, and so we set up a trust fund, and the trust fund was the lockbox to keep everything in. We realized that we couldn't do that. And my question at the last budget meeting was, well, why do we automatically have to raise fees if we go into this pile of money that we can't use? The truth is that recreation, because we can't reimburse the fees, the fee structure has been that the township, the general tax revenue, has been subsidizing the salaries for Camp Bedminster, and of course the staff. Of course the staff, because the law didn't allow for it. So we always knew that the permanent staff's salaries could not be reimbursed, and we tried to chase that around for years. But then in trying to look at whether the fees would take care of the temporary salaries, well, apparently we kind of miscalculated on that. But we now know we can, and we've accumulated all this money into rec trust. I mean, you only have to raise fees if you're deciding that the general revenue is not going to fund it in future years. Otherwise, you don't have to raise fees. You can still choose to take the general taxpayers' revenues and prop up a part of Camp Bedminster if you want, and not raise fees. So that's a choice. It's not a, well, you have to, because it makes it sound like, well, we're going to rob the rec trust, and then we're going to put it on the back by jacking up fees. No. We have been supplementing the fees out of the general fund for years. Now, this is a decision of this governing body whether in years we want to even that out or if we want to leave it stand. So I kind of don't go along with the idea that it's an either or proposition. If you go into rec trust, you automatically have to raise fees. But
At the end of the day, the auditor suggested that we maybe supplement with about 5,000 this year. The DCA...
How much?
5, just because we can, that's really affordable. And we did ask, could we take, we have about, I think it's around 188,000 in rec trust as at the end of last year. It's about 150 right now. They suggested that we take about 50,000 and reimburse ourselves for paying the rec trust salaries in 2017. That would be one use. Supplement the part-time salaries at some number this year. Could be 5,000, could be 10,000, whatever you decide. Going forward, and that would bring rec trust down to kind of balance it out, because we need to keep some of that money in there that Robin has already used to make a lot of the reservations for Camp Bedminster. So you need like seed money to get started. But then going forward, at the end of the year, they're recommending that there be a refund to the users. At the end of the program, if there's money left over, that should be reimbursed, is what they're recommending.
Well, I will say, right now we're in a budget discussion. We got to come up with what is our budget for the year. I will say probably after the dust clears out of the budget, sometime in, May or so, maybe we unpeel the onion on, we ought to have a good discussion on what do the five of us think should be the policy over recreation. And it's deja vu all over again for me, because 9 years ago, this is where I came in, and we tried to figure out how to do it, and 9 years later, it's still scratching our head a little bit.
Well, it sounds as if the rationale to creating the rec trust fund was that you would end up with a good way of making sure that rec was self-sustaining off its fees. However, based upon the DCA position, at least the position that we've been implementing, no. Because it doesn't account. And for several years, I guess we've not been using it to pay down the part-time seasonal salaries based upon what we thought was a DCA position.
Correct.
So if that was the original intent of creating the rec trust, it's failed, because it doesn't, the expenses aren't able to be spent on, well, the revenue coming in is not being able to be spent on the expenses.
Right.
It's not dollar in, dollar out. It's dollar in, 60 cents, 40 cents out. So,
and by the way, that 40 cents is still coming out, but it's coming from the general fund.
Correct. So maybe, it doesn't, to me, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, I think now that we have a commitment from the DCA that we can use recreation trust funds to pay the part-time seasonal people, which we were always told, no, you can't do that. So I would recommend, not necessarily for this budget, because the budget is now, but let's determine, like you say.
But I think it actually goes a little bit deeper than that, because, for example, when Robin had mentioned buying lacrosse goals or lacrosse equipment or soccer goals or soccer equipment, folks pay field fees to use the fields. Shouldn't that expense on buying that equipment be able to come out of the rec trust fund?
Because they're paying for the field.
They're paying for those facilities.
DCA asked us today, we have this surplus in Recreation Trust. So they said they would like, we can use that money, but they want us to give them a written plan of how we're going to use that money, and they will give us a thumbs up or thumbs down. That would have to come from Debbie Stern, and she said, you know, we need to sit down and come up with how we're going to spend this $150,000 that we have in Rec Trust. Before she can spend, she has to get permission.
Just to clarify, those field fees that are taken in each year are put into a field trust. It's a separate trust account from the rec trust account.
Actually, no, that's just revenue. That does, it's anticipated revenue.
It's anticipated revenue, but it is a trust account that the money goes into. But you anticipate $7,000?
It's $7,500.
$7,500 of whatever she brings in. I think it's an average of around $13,000 to $15,000.
So I guess the question is there a distinction between just using the fields versus using soccer goal or using lacrosse goal or using those other equipment that are non-land improvements? And I'm just throwing it there. I'm not expecting either of you to answer that question. But if we're truly, if the intent was always to make it money in, money out, and you've got to be able to use it.
And based on the discussion from Robin, the only program that we currently have is the Camp Bedminster program that is not self-sustaining at this point in time. Everything else that she has is relatively sustaining.
And oh, by the way, the idea that at the end of the year, if there's going to be a reimbursement to anybody, that reimbursement goes to the Bedminster taxpayers, because for at least the 9 years I've been around, the general fund has been the one that's been taking up the slack. So I don't necessarily go back to the users.
They want us to give them a written plan of what we're going to do.
Yeah, well,
What is your auditor saying?
That's he's saying we could use a small piece this year, say 5,000, because now we have permission, or not. Is it a
Well,
choice?
I don't want to, I think first, before we talk about what the auditor says, I mean, what we've discovered is that the auditor is saying, based on this conversation with DCA, that we can use that money, right? Whether it's 5,000 or anything else, it's for the auditor to say it. But once we have the ability to use those funds, that's a TC decision.
Correct.
yeah.
His comment was, if to do the full 55, it was not sustainable. But
We say not sustainable.
So we don't generate an additional 55,000 every year.
Right. But you have a P&L issue on one side, meaning how much does it bring in versus how much comes out. But in terms of the rec trust, we talked at the last budget meeting about a level to get it to, such that it was available for seed money, but it wasn't so overinflated or overfunded as it is right now. Can we take it down to that level?
Take it, we were figuring, what, was it 25,000 was about a good number that she needs to make all these reservations at the beginning of the year. That was what she needed to leave that. But anything above that could be used for these other ideas.
So here, we can take everything above and beyond that?
Yes.
Okay.
So, like I said, as the discussion of the last budget meeting, if you wanted to just blow up that account, you could still do it and fund it all out of general and just keep good accounting records, and you can determine if you're making money or losing money and to what extent it needs to be subsidized. And that's a quality call by the five of us as to how much do you want to subsidize it. And not, but the history of it is that you had one side that was complaining that, recreation was a big money loser and it was a big hole in the budget. You had the other side saying that, oh, we get a lot of money and the town steals that money and puts it in general fund and the rec doesn't get everything that they deserve. Well, the truth is it was kind of in the middle, as most things tend to be. So the goal was to try to make recreation more self-sustaining, or at least more visible, more transparent. So we knew exactly what was going on. I'm not sure we achieved those, but I think we're on the right path.
Just to finish up, how that changed that we just talked about, if you look at your capital budget, since the 55,000, we decided we weren't going to fund that full amount through rec trust, okay? So the $55,000 had to come from somewhere. Staff sat down, we talked about it, we looked at the capital budget again and decided that the equipment that Public Works needed, they have some leftover still in an ordinance leftover from 2017, about $49,000, $50,000 that's still available to them. Added that to the 115 that we talked about for a paver that would partially be paid for from open space trust account. That would leave John about $22,300 that he could spend on other equipment. That would be new money. So altogether, I think it was leaving somewhere around $60,000 for something new this year plus the paver. And John said that was certainly sufficient for his department this year. So those numbers worked out to what we needed it to be to come to the 0% increase in the amount to be raised by taxes we spoke about.
Is there anything we're foregoing or putting off by reducing it by the 53,000? Because we originally had 75K, and if I understand, you're taking about 53K out now.
Correct.
Okay. Is there anything we're foregoing or putting off?
And again, the capital budget, as you see in front of you, is just a bottom line number. We haven't adopted any ordinances, we haven't put any projects in at this point in time. You can pick and choose. There's $100,000 is sitting into that sinking fund that we're calling it for the fire trucks. So we've got money there, it's not allocated to anything at this point in time.
Right,
so.
that $100,000 is just there. It's not appropriated for any particular purpose. And I will tell you, Debbie and I also have kind of a policy ourselves that with the capital budget has a $250,000 balance that we just keep it at. In addition to what we're funding this year, that's an emergency fund in case there's some big thing that you decide you need to purchase. We have a $250,000 in the account that's not specified for any one thing. It could be used for any emergency.
Where's the 250, where do we see that
It's in
250?
the capital fund balance. It's not new money, it's just savings.
I ultimately think that look, I think this is probably better debated, clear-headed after the budget's done, but I personally don't think, I think we're being a little bit too conservative. I don't know why we really need to hold it in all the rec trust needs is that $25,000 in seed money, and quite frankly, you could put that in the general fund and just budget it as seed money. So I think we should have that discussion after the budget and have it as a separate discussion.
If you were to move a piece of it over, say to pay ourselves back the $50,000 as I mentioned, or some other purpose, it would be miscellaneous revenue that would go to surplus.
Yeah, so.
But it is interesting, because, I mean, just from a historical perspective, to really understand the rationale behind creating the rec trust in the beginning, and where it succeeded in meeting that rationale and where it failed. Because it just seems to me it's not working, but clearly it was, I mean, that's why the state allows you to have rec trusts, is to make it work and to make it be self-sufficient. But there's obviously a delta between the expectations and the reality.
I do know fees have not been increased the last couple of years because we knew we thought we couldn't fund the part-time employees. So there really wasn't a need, that costs were kind of stable.
You know, the
look at that.
the DCA statement that says, you know, for example, you can use the rec trust funds to pay for bus trips and for the voucher programs. I mean, that's, you know, a sliver of the universe of the rec program expenses. So there's, you know, DCA's really got to give a little bit more guidance as to, you know, whether it exists or whether it's just that. I mean, if it's just that sliver, it's not good for our programs. Maybe it's better for a bigger program, but not ours.
But what they want us to do is come up with how people want to use it and submit it to them for their approval.
And like we've said, other municipalities are using it. the way we should be using it and have done away with it apparently, so
Or maybe they got permission, I don't know.
maybe they didn't.
All right.
So, like you said, we need to look at this and come up with a plan.
So just in summary, there's a 0% increase in the amount to be raised by taxes using the additional surplus that we have this year.
What's the monthly operating expense for Bedminster? Like, what's the actual monthly about, do you know? I know that's probably like this divided by 12, right? Something divided by 12, but I don't know. Do you have any idea?
Varies because
I couldn't really-
School stuff too.
Yeah, what plays into that is the fact that we pay the school, and we pay the county, and we pay the library, so
Up and down.
it
goes up and down.
quarterly payments, so.
And then with the zero, what would the surplus, what is our surplus?
So doing the surplus, our surplus regeneration next year, we had 880,000 this year. Our surplus next year will be about $60,000 less. That's a very conservative estimate. So it could be fairly close, but it could be so maybe only about 800 to 825.
I'm thinking 20 steps ahead. You know, you don't want a zero one year and then it goes way up the next.
Right.
But your surplus has historically been, what, about $500,000?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in a big year, you gotta, you know, if you can't do it this year, when
When are you going to do it?
when could you possibly do it?
Right.
And at what point do we, you know, give the taxpayers a break? And we're not giving it back, we're just not asking them for more.
Right.
Again, we're just not asking them for more. That's,
And at the end of the day, the amount to be raised by taxes actually went down a couple dollars.
That's
So, overall.
all right. Any more comments, questions? All right.
So with your permission, I'd like to just double check everything this week. I spoke to the auditor today. We have to do the user-friendly budget and introduce for the 19th. There's a lot of paperwork we need to create in order to do that. So with your permission, if there's any question, we'll certainly maybe reach out to the mayor if there's a question. But I think we're in pretty good shape with our goal.
Sense of the board? Doug?
Oh, look, I mean, we've done a deep drill on every line item that comprises the budget, and I think we've done a real good job in trying to be prudent, planning for the future, but yet living in, you know, the here and the now. My only, I don't even want to say concern, my only thought on it is that I don't want to create this year a sense of, you know, zero if next year it's going to be a big hit because we may have been too fine with the scalpel, but if I'm hearing that our projected surplus is not going to be materially different than it is this year, I mean, I'm ecstatic about the fact that we can deliver that number. That was my only issue, is that are we doing such a knock-up job this year that next year is going to be sort of a smack in the face, but I don't see that, and I'm not hearing that.
Yeah, the projection is the surplus would not increase a lot, and we may go down maybe 50 to 60,000, but we're still...
And remember, a good portion of that surplus we're putting aside for another reason that may or may not come to fruition. Remember, we're putting some aside. If that doesn't come to pass, or it goes in our favor, or there's nothing next year that has the same ask, well, then we're X amount ahead.
That comes back to it.
Yeah, so,
You know,
I mean, that's just a huge buffer.
if I can just parlay also into comment sections coming up, I read in the paper today that Bridgewater's mayor has passed a zero increase tax to the Bridgewater residents. Obviously subject for their approval, but, you know, this is something that I think all towns are looking at, and I share the notion that if we can deliver it, then we need to deliver it, with the notion that we're not hamstringing ourselves down years to come. It doesn't sound like that's the case, so I'm very happy about the work we've done, and support that.
No, Mayor, just to reiterate your comments, if not now, then when? So I think this is the time, and, you know, we can address the rec issues and rec trust issues offline and kind of get a tighter, you know, handle on those. I think that's important work to do after the fact, but I support this initiative.
Jacobs?
I'm in favor of what we've come to date with. No further comments.
Ms. Santucci?
I'm in favor of what we proposed with Bud Jones. Our auditor has taken a look at it. I'm satisfied that, we can sustain it, and I hope we do just as good of a job next year.
Well, I would agree that, look, this is a typical, excruciatingly painful sometimes process, but Bedminster always does this. Bedminster, as Colin said last year, treats the taxpayers' money like it's our money, and that's one of the things I'm very proud of here. And that is not the 5 of us up here only, and in fact, it's much more so the folks here and the folks that they represent. The staff, all the departments, they look at it again as if it's their money that's being spent, and we appreciate it, and the Bedminster taxpayers, I know, very much appreciate it. So thank you and thank you. So I guess there's your sense.
Okay, thank you.
Township Committee comments. Anything more you wish to say before we go into exec? Doug, go ahead.
No, Mayor, thank you.
Colin?
No comments, Mayor, thank you.
Larry?
Chief, how you feeling?
Well, thank you.
Can you
Welcome
stand?
back.
I can do it all.
You can do it all?
Deep knee
You
bends?
can run?
Leg press.
Squat thrusts?
They're
Give us 10, right?
You know, John Bellardo has probably got a running club on.
No, I have an application.
Oh, good.
Coming up with me to Maine the end of April to do a 10 mile.
They have,
There you go. Chief, it's good to see you back, and I'm glad you're feeling well.
thank you. Glad to do this.
Stacy?
I was really impressed by the Cedar Ridge neighbors because they all came together and it was great to see everybody. And they were just really respectful of each other. And I was very proud to say that they're, our neighbors, all of our neighbors. So it was nice to see them. Hopefully we'll be able to work on their issue. But I thought they were really respectful, and you can kind of, everybody was kind of, deferring to everybody's opinion. So it was really
There's
kind
a
of neat.
very positive discourse.
Yeah.
It gave us data that we need. It gave us a sense of what they feel, and we had positive and negative, and it wasn't a lot of finger pointing and name calling and people getting very angst-ridden. And no, that's exactly what you would hope for in this position to hear from your constituents.
They
So,
really liked each other, so it was kind of neat.
I will also say in closing, without giving details, but I will just backfill in the comments that I've heard coming from the school and both the school districts. I want to again thank the staff, and especially the chief and the police department, for working with our neighbors down in Bernardsville and with our neighbors down the road at the Bedminster School to give the proper attention and review of security plans, both down in Bernardsville and at our school, and giving it the attention that it deserves, not taking it lightly. That's why we have you guys and gals across the street, and we appreciate the attention taken towards that. So Bedminster residents should know that Chief Rock and his folks are on top of things, and the whole staff backs them up, and hope for the best. So, but thank you for your preparation. With that, can I get a motion for executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. See you in the back.
Judy, are there bills to sign?
It should be,
Tell me when the mics and the cameras are back
they are on. They're back.
All right, it is 9:16 and we are out of executive session. Does anybody have anything else they wish to discuss? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Nice. Where?
We have resolutions for me to sign.
Yes, sir.
See you Wednesday.
Yes.